Alright, I am back with another video, and today we are doing what might just be the most highly requested build on my channel. Ever? I'm not entirely sure. I think it was because, like, at the moment, at the kind of point where my channel was really getting its big break, and was at the height of its popularity, Season 2 of the Marvel Loki show came out, and as such, people really wanted me to build Loki. And despite that show kind of coming and going, I'm still getting these requests, especially from one person in particular. You know who you are. So I thought, you know what? I give. Let's build Loki today. Because I had a bit of a motivation for doing it. When I initially thought of building a Loki build, I'm just like, ugh, it's gonna be another bard. But no. I've actually found that maybe one of the better ways to build Loki, at least in my opinion, and from my understanding of the character and all that, it's not bard at all, which is gonna seem weird, but trust me, it will make sense. Now, when I thought of building Loki, I don't think of, like, because obviously in the movies, and by the way, this is the movie Marvel Cinematic Universe version, okay, I know, like, the comics version, and obviously the straight-up Norse mythology version, are very different characters, but I wanted to kind of focus on the Marvel movie version, because that is kind of the most popular version, and is the easiest to build. I kind of wanted to, as I was kind of playing through that, I was going through ideas for the build. I'm like, I don't think this build is like a frontline fighter, because yes, Loki is strong. Yes, Loki can fight, but I don't think that's what this build in D&D, or at least in Baldur's Gate 3 is. In D&D, you can absolutely make that because you have 20 levels, but here we don't. So I had to kind of prioritize what would make this build unique while also sticking true to the Loki character, and I believe this is more of a support manipulator kind of character, someone who can really help out on the battlefield by manipulating their enemies, rather than just being straight up a blaster caster, although we are going to get some of that, or a martial fighter, but we're not really going to be a martial fighter with this build, although we will have some martial options when we get into it. But we're going to be a bit of a, if we decide to go the more martial route, we're going to be a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none type situation, so I really wanted to focus on the kind of the kind of manipulation aspect of Loki, because Loki wouldn't get up and personal in the fight if he can help it. He would manipulate people into doing things for him, whether that would be, you know, people he's mind controlled, or if he just uses the old "oh brother please" act on Thor, which, for the record, people have also asked me for a Thor build, and for most people don't know, I've actually already done one. My Fallen Thunder God build kind of goes over is kind of a build concept video where I go over a bunch of different ways to potentially make a Thor-like character, but that one was more focused on the God of War Ragnarok variant of Thor, whereas this one is more of the Marvel Loki. Anyway, heavily extended intro out the way, let's get into the build. So, I said we're not going as a bard, so what are we going as to start? And well, we're going Cleric. And there's a few reasons for this, but I'll get into that in a minute. First off, we are playing a human, because that kind of gets us close to the Loki look, but it also is going to give us proficiency with spears, pikes, halberds, and glaives. Now, this build isn't going to require one of those weapons, but one of the weapons I would like to use if we decide to put a little bit of martial prowess into this is going to need those proficiencies, and also I wanted the extra skill proficiency that human gets. So we're going with that. But we're starting off as a cleric for a few reasons. Number one being the Trickery domain. That is going to immediately get us a few things that are super on point for Loki. Number one being disguise self. He's a master of illusions. He disguises himself all throughout the Marvel films. This is perfect. And also something like charm person to manipulate others as well. Baked right into the kit. Perfect. We also get Blessing of the Trickster to allow us to give ourselves or an ally advantage on stealth checks, but this can work in the early game, but it's a bit meh otherwise, in my opinion. Let's go over the cantrips. We're only going to be getting the super basic stuff here for, you know, basically kind of manipulating dialogue, which is going to be Resistance, Guidance, and Thaumaturgy. Thaumaturgy is going to give us advantage on intimidation and performance checks, which is great. Guidance is going to give us a 1d4 ability bonus to all 1d4 bonus to all ability checks, my apologies. And Resistance will do the same, but for saving throws, this is going to be nice for us if we want to kind of be the face of the party, so we want these to kind of boost up our dialogue options. As for our deity, I mean, there's two kind of there is two selectable deities in the game that kind of revolve around Trickery. The one that I would personally pick, but is not in this game as selectable by players, but it is in the game, is Cleric, who is like the god of like, is like a trickery god, but he's like about like oppression and such like that, and I thought that was close. So your only options are Garl Glittergold, which is a gnomish god of like humour and pranks, more sided trickery, less like kind of Loki's mischief. So I've decided to go with Tiamat here, which yes, I know doesn't really make sense, but I'm kind of leaning into another aspect of Loki that is kind of lesser talked about, especially in the cinematic universe, where Tiamat might make sense, and I'll explain my reasoning later, but her domain is trickery, so I do feel like it kind of works, but I'll explain myself further as we go on. As for our abilities, these are going to look a bit weird, but bear with me. We're going to be going for our intelligence at 16, with a 14 there and a +2 into it, because this is going to be our main spellcasting stat as we go further on. I want wisdom and charisma at 14 each. This basically is just going to give us good dialogue checks with charisma and good cleric, and allow our cleric options to be occasionally useful, but we also just kind of want all three of these stats to be good, so we're good in conversation and manipulation anyway, and we're going to use those final points to bump up our constitution to 14. Unfortunately, this is going to leave us with an odd ability score, so we can just pop that into whichever we like. I'll just say strength for now, and we're going to leave dexterity at 8 because we are using the gloves of dexterity to boost our dexterity up, because this build is a bit multi-ability score dependent, so we want to have an item that we can get early on to bump up our dex, but I would recommend maybe swapping out charisma for dexterity until you get the gloves, but these are what our stats are going to look like kind of by the end of it, once you've gotten those gloves in later Act 1. As for our skill proficiencies, our human skill proficiency that I went with is Stealth. However, this is not mandatory. I would also pick Deception as well, but Stealth is going to help us out with another aspect of Loki later, and this was the only way to get it with the multi-classing that I'm planning to do. But if you wanted to go with Deception because you think that would make more sense, that is absolutely fine, I totally understand. But you'll see what I mean as we kind of get into things as we go. Next up, at Cleric level 2, we are going to get the main reason I wanted our levels in Cleric in the first place, and that is going to be Invoke, Duplicity, distract your enemies with an illusion. Within 3 meters of the illusion, attack rolls have advantage for you and your allies. Both the attacker and the creature must be within 3 meters of the illusion. So basically what this will allow you to do is if you're in combat, you can summon an illusory duplicate of yourself, which does actually look like your character, and that will allow you and your allies to attack the enemy that it is next to with advantage, and it can also invoke the ire of those enemies as well. One of Loki's big tricks that was prevalent throughout all of the Marvel films was the ability to kind of clone himself and then kind of appear in another place. One of his most iconic scenes in the first Avengers film kind of comes from that, and I feel like this skill was absolutely necessary to grab for Loki, 100%. We also do get to prepare some spells. I'm going to suggest Sanctuary right off the bat. This is going to be super useful. This will allow you to set up your non-harmful manipulation spells and then put Sanctuary on yourself so that you can't be attacked and therefore won't drop concentration on them, meaning that you can keep those spells up while Thor and the others, deal the damage that they can. So pretty good. I'm also going to recommend Create or Destroy Water. Now, Loki is a frost giant, so I've kind of decided to lean in to some offensive ice spells for him, and dousing our enemies with water will make them vulnerable to cold damage, and therefore take double damage from our ice spells. The next one is going to be Command. Again, if we want an early game manipulation spell, this is the way to go, and it will be pretty useful in the early game as well. And finally, the last spell can kind of be whatever you want, it really doesn't matter. Something like Bane could be good if you want to kind of go into that debilitating your enemies route, but Loki does have somewhat of a healing factor, so you could throw on a Healing Word if you like, or if you want an offensive spell, you could go for Inflict Wounds or Guiding Bolt. It's entirely up to you. I feel like having a little bit of extra healing that you can do, especially with the high level spell slots that we're going to be getting, might be a bit better for survivability in the long run, but feel free to take whatever you like here. And with our 2 levels of Cleric, we are done, and I want to move straight into our main class for this build, and that is going to be, you probably guessed it, Wizard. Now, Wizard is basically going to give us the most amount of spells that will allow us to round out Loki's kit, and as such, and again, Loki is a very smart character, so I feel like him being mostly intelligence-based actually does make a lot of sense. But let's get into the nitty-gritty. First up, our cantrips, and obviously we want Ray of Frost as our main offensive cantrip. Again, Loki is a frost giant, and while he doesn't use ice magic a lot throughout the films, there are a few scenes where he does, and he does so to great effect. So when we need some offensive spells, we might as well go with something that is on theme for him, that being cold magic. Next up, the obvious choice here is Friends, allowing you to gain advantage on charisma checks against non-hostile creatures. This is perfect for Loki and perfect for being the face of the party, because you can use these spells to you can use this cantrip to gain advantage on all those checks and be able to manipulate people through dialogue as well as on the battlefield. And finally, I'm going to go with Minor Illusion. Again, it is literally an illusion about creating something fake that enemies will go and investigate, that you can use to then sneak up on them and deal that shifty killing sneak attack. You know the one. And then finally, our spells, and we have a lot of things we need to cover quite early on. Mage Armour is going to be super important. We are wearing clothing with this build because this was the closest I could kind of get to Loki's kind of movie robish armorish kind of look, so Mage Armour helps with that. We're also going to want Ice Knife being our main ice damage spell that is leveled, allowing us to deal piercing and cold damage and create ice surfaces for our enemies to slip on, which is a bit mischievous. We can also grab something like Magic Missile as well, because Loki, I keep saying Loki, oh my god, Loki's scepter was able to do those like big magic blasts from the Power of the Mind Stone, so Magic Missile would kind of replicate that if you wanted something other than cold damage to be able to attack with, so I feel like that works out pretty nicely, but this one's kind of loose, you can swap this one out. Shield, obviously, because it is super useful, and I want 2 enchantment spells for manipulating others, so let's go with Sleep and Tasha's Hideous Laughter. Sleep allowing us to put our enemies to sleep up to a combined 24 hit points. So for those of you who don't really know how that works, say you have an enemy with 8 HP and an enemy with 12 HP, you could cast Sleep on both of them, and because they have less than 24 hit points total, they will both fall asleep. But if you try to cast this on an enemy that has, say, 30 HP, it won't work, but obviously you can upcast a spell to increase the hit point threshold, so that's kind of how Sleep works, in case people don't know, because, again, popular character means newer people might be coming to this video. If so, hello! Next up is Tasha's Hideous Laughter, allowing you to, at the cost of your concentration, make an enemy prone on the floor in a fit of laughter, which is pretty good. It's going to take a singular enemy right out of the fight. And we can now prepare these spells, and I'll go with this for now. Next up at Wizard Level 2, we are going to choose our subclass. And of course, we're going with Illusion, right? Because, you know, he literally casts illusions. That is his whole thing. I mean, it would make perfect sense to go for this subclass, which is why I'm not doing it. When I actually look at Illusion as a subclass, I find that, especially with the direction I want to go with this build, Illusion doesn't really do what I'm looking for. It gives us the ability to cast Minor Illusion as a bonus action. Okay. It would also give us the ability to use See Invisibility once per short rest at level 6, which is, I mean, okay. And then at level 10, we would get a super on-theme feature for Loki, which is the ability to create an illusory duplicate of yourself that takes an attack once per short rest. But we kind of already got the whole cloning double thing from Trickery Cleric, so I didn't really see a need to go all the way to level 10 in a subclass that doesn't really give us great features otherwise, and doesn't really give us much help with our actual illusion spells, so I decided to go with something that I haven't used before on the channel, and that is the Enchantment School. I've never used this one before. I put out a community post a few days ago showing how much I used each subclass in every video I've made, and there was a few at the very bottom of the list which I hadn't used yet, and Enchantment was one of them, and I'm quite happy to say that this subclass I vastly underestimated. There's a lot of cool things to love here, especially for a build like this, so let's get into it. First up, we have Hypnotic Gaze. Charm and incapacitate a creature. It cannot attack you, it cannot act. Now, the interesting thing about this is I thought, oh really, a 2-turn, you know, like, charm, I mean, that's okay. But the thing is if you want to continue spending an action each turn, you can extend the duration. So if you are playing as part of a party and you really want to keep one enemy out of the fight because it's going to cause trouble, you can use this feature, which isn't going to use your spell slots, to be able to keep that enemy out while your allies are able to do other things. Now, if an ally attacks this enemy, it is unfortunately going to break your hold over them. However, if you're in an encounter with multiple enemies, or you're against a boss and you need a setup round, this is going to allow you to do that, which is super, super good, and I absolutely think this is actually one of the better features you can get from Wizard at level 2, now that I've actually looked into it more. So it really helps for me to do my research and actually try things out before judging things too harshly. Now, as for our extra spells we can get at this level, we've covered most of the Loki stuff. So you have a few more options. If you want to go with Chromatic Orb for the Ice variant, you can, but Ice Knife kind of already does that. So I'm just going to grab Long Strider and Enhanced Leap, just because that kind of is going to give us our, like, Loki mobility, you know, that all superheroes get, like, that kind of, like, you know, fast movement, high jumping kind of mobility. You know what I mean. And I'll go with Sleep for our extra prepared spell. Next up at Wizard level 3, we are going to be getting our level 2 spells, and the first one I'm going to be picking up is obviously Mirror Image. Create 3 illusory duplicates of yourself that distract attackers. Each duplicate increases your armor class by 3. Lasts for 10 turns, or until all of your illusory duplicates are gone, because each time you successfully evade an attack, one of them disappears, but it doesn't require concentration, so again, this is more clones of yourself that you get to summon that actually have a use. And the next one, I'm gonna say we're gonna go for it. You can kind of pick these in any order, but we'll just go with this one first. Invisibility. Loki does actually turn invisible quite a lot, and it would make, obviously when he makes his illusory clones, he usually turns invisible to sneak away and get his, like, backstabs in, while they're focused on the clone, so having invisibility is a pretty good idea. But we are going to be getting this from some other things. We're also going to get things like greater invisibility later, but this is a nice thing to have now if you really want it, so I'll pick it up now just to show it off. And we'll stick that one on. At Wizard level 4, we're going to be grabbing our first feat. And of course, we're just going to be taking an ability score improvement to bump up our intelligence to 18, making our spell saves DCs as high as they can be at this point. We also do get another cantrip at this level, and let's go for Mage Hand. Loki does kind of get telekinesis. In fact, well, I don't say he doesn't kind of get it, he does get it. So having kind of a minor version of that for, again, a build like this makes sense. We also do get to pick 2 extra spells at this point, and I'm going to be going with Hold Person and Crown of Madness. These are both enchantment spells, and they're going to have various useful effects for us. Hold Person will allow us to hold an enemy in place, allowing us or our allies to attack them, as long as we keep our concentration up, which is pretty good. And Crown of Madness is going to allow us to instill madness in a humanoid enemy, making them attack the creature closest to them, other than ourselves, even if it's allied. This is going to be our very first kind of way of manipulating our enemies into attacking each other, like Loki does. Not quite full mind control, but we will get to that later, but it's a good start. At Wizard level 5, we are going to be able to get level 3 spells. And this one is definitely going to be a choose your favourite situation. Now, you may immediately look at Haste and think, oh yeah, I'll just grab Haste, but I'm actually going to recommend against it. You have so many other concentration options that are going to be more useful than giving yourself or a single ally just Haste, which, don't get me wrong, Haste is super, super strong, but that's not really what this build is about, and we are going to be getting Haste another way anyway, as you can probably already guess, so there's not really much of a point in grabbing this here, so I'm not going to worry about it. What I do kind of want is more manipulation spells, and I quite like grabbing something like Hypnotic Pattern and Slow. Hypnotic Pattern is going to allow us to hypnotize creatures that can see the pattern. They cannot attack you, they cannot move or act, and this can be cast while silenced. It's just another way to kind of stop people from attacking you or your allies, and allow your allies to go after them. It's kind of like a better version of the Hypnotic Gaze that we got as a class feature, but obviously this one costs the spell slots and requires concentration, or I think the other one requires concentration. I'm all over the place, but Hypnotic Pattern is a good spell and we want it. And also Slow, which is the opposite of Haste. Target up to 6 creatures and slow them. Movement and actions are affected, and their AC and Dexterity saves are reduced by 2, meaning that they're going to be easy for your allies to hit. And we'll slide these 2 in. Next up at Wizard level 6, we are going to be getting our next subclass feature, and that is Instinctive Charm, which is actually a really cool feature. Charm an enemy attacking you. They will attack a new target if possible as a reaction. So basically, you use this as a reaction when an enemy attacks you, and if it's possible for them to swap their target to someone else, they will do so. So basically it allows you to hide behind Thor when you guys are trying to escape the arena planet or whatever it was in the third Thor movie. It's been a while. And we do get a couple of extra spells at this point, and I'm going to recommend Counter Spell. I don't know, it just feels right for a build like this, and again is a really useful utility option that will allow you to help your team at only the cost of a spell slot and a reaction, rather than your concentration, so pretty good. And as for our next spell, it's entirely up to you. I might go back down to the level 2 options here and grab, probably not Phantasmal Killer, we have a lot of concentration. Maybe just another kind of blaster spell, or blur, maybe even darkness could be a good one as kind of like a mischievous act. I don't know, you'll kind of have to play around with these ones. Maybe I'll just go with... I'll go with darkness, because I think it is going to have some situational usage in a build like this, if you wanted to blind some enemies and stop them from being able to target your allies for a turn, but again, play around with this slot, there might be better options. At Wizard level 7, we are going to be able to get level 4 spells, and of course there's a couple that I want right off the bat. Greater invisibility, as I already said, this is going to allow us to turn invisible, but we can still attack and, cast spells without breaking the invisibility as long as we succeed a stealth check. That is why we picked up stealth as our human proficiency, but again, if you don't care about this spell so much, you can get rid of this if you like. It's not the end of the world, and pick something else and go and maybe take deception proficiency that way. It's entirely up to you. I'm also going to be picking up Ice Storm, a powerful ice magic spell that is going to allow us to deal 2d8 bludgeoning damage plus 4d6 cold, and again create ice surfaces, which is pretty good. I will stick these in there. Perfect. Next up at Wizard level 8, we are going to be getting some more level 4 spells and a feat, and with our feats, of course, we're just going to bump up our intelligence to 20, making our spell save DC as high as it will possibly go. And as for our spells, we have a couple of options here. I'm going to go with Confusion, because again, it's another enchantment spell that allows us to confuse a group of enemies, causing them to attack at random, wander around aimlessly, and occasionally skip turns in the stupor. This lasts for 3 turns, and again is a great way to manipulate your enemies and take a large bunch of them out. And as for our next spell, I mean, Loki does kind of teleport around a lot, so I could see Dimension Door coming up as a possible option. I did skip Misty Step earlier because we're going to be getting that from a piece of equipment, but Dimension Door might be good if you want to teleport yourself and an ally somewhere, so we'll go with that for now. And yeah, we'll slip Confusion in. At Wizard level 9, we're going to be getting level 5 spells, and of course there's 2 that I want immediately right off the bat. That is Dominate Person and Hold Monster. Dominate Person is going to allow us to mind control an enemy, making them fight for us. This is straight up Loki to a T. Perfect. And also, Hold Monster is now going to allow us to paralyze any creature, meaning that instead of just Hold Person, where we can only paralyze humanoids, meaning that we can seriously take an enemy out of the fight pretty quickly, allowing our allies to absolutely wail on them. Pretty good. I say that a lot in my videos. Pretty good. I do. I know I do. It's a habit I would like to change. And then finally, at Wizard level 10, we're going to be getting the main subclass feature that I really wanted to dip into this for. Split Enchantment. You know your enchantments inside and out. You can target 2 creatures with enchantment spells that would normally only target 1. This means 2 enemies with command, Tasha's Hideous Laughter, Dominate Person, any Crown of Madness. I did it again, Crown of Madness. Any single target enchantment spell that we grab can now affect 2 people at once. Using Dominate Person on 2 enemies is huge, and is a really, really fun strategy that I think you guys will absolutely love doing. Yes, we don't get it until the very end game, but again, you're fighting a lot of humanoid enemies in Act 3, so it's definitely going to come up. So absolutely recommend this. This is super, super cool, and I wish I knew this feature existed sooner. We do get another cantrip at this level. I don't know. this one. And as for our spells, we do get 2 more level 5 spells at this point, and I want Cone of Cold for our final big ice damage spell, as well as Telekinesis, because Loki does have Telekinesis, like I said, and there's nothing more mischievous than just picking up an enemy with your mind and yeeting them across the map or off a cliff or something. It's a really fun spell, just use it, you'll have a good time. And we'll slap Cone of Cold and Telekinesis. Perfect. So yeah, that is the build. As you can see out of our spells here, some of them are lit up. These are all of the spells that we have that are affected by split enchantment. Unfortunately, a few of the more fun spells like Telekinesis doesn't work with this, but hey ho. But overall, we have a really nice selection of spells here. And as well as all things that are on themes, such as, you know, like I said, Dominate Person, Hypnotic Gaze, Touchless Hideous Laughter, Friends, Crown of Madness, Hold Monster and Hold Person, and then also things like Invisibility and Greater Invisibility, and just, you know, things like, and helpful utility options like Slow and Confusion. We have a lot of great stuff for manipulating the battlefield and our enemies, just like Loki would. So with all of that said, let's get into the equipment. I'll firstly go over the weapons, as it's kind of a weird thing with this build. We're starting off with the Morning Frost, which is a quarterstaff. With this, it can do 1d8 bludgeoning damage plus 1d4 cold damage, but that is with our strength, which we haven't spec'd into, so we're not really going to be using this for melee attacks. But it does bump up our cold damage spells, allowing them to deal an additional 1 cold damage. Yippee. But hey, damage is damage. But dealing cold damage with a spell possibly inflicts chilled upon the target, and what chilled does, it is now the affected entity is vulnerable to cold damage and resistant to fire damage. It basically means that we don't need to use Create or Destroy Water to make our ice spells deal double damage. We can just get it here. This is just a good Act 1 option, and again I wanted Loki to kind of wield the scepter in a way, and while we can't really get something that looks like it in this game, the Morning Frost does kind of give off that blue glow and is iced based, so I thought it would work well here. However, once you get into Act 3, if you want an actual weapon for Loki to use, you can pick up the Dancing Breeze. I think it looks quite good for a build like this. It is a glaive, meaning it is a two-handed weapon, and because we went with human, we get proficiency in it. It's a +2 weapon, and because it's a glaive, it gets a bit of extra reach, but it's also unique because this is a finesse weapon, meaning it actually uses our dexterity, which, again, because of the gloves of dexterity, is actually pretty high. But it also gets the unique whirlwind attack, allowing you to attack enemies that are all around you, like Link's, you know, like charged spin from the Zelda games, which I thought was pretty cool. And again, if you buff this with something like the Drakethroat Glaive, get an extra bit of cold damage on it and make it a +3 weapon, it could be super, super cool. So that is kind of an Act 3 option if you don't care so much about the stuff that the Morning Frost gives you, and you want to actually be able to do melee damage. So let's get into the actual armour now. We have the Cold Brim Hat. Once per turn, any condition inflicted on a target also implies 2 turns of Encrusted with Frost. What Encrusted with Frost does is the affected enemy has disadvantage on dex saving throws, which is great. That means they're more likely to slip on ice that we create. When there are 7 or more turns remaining, the entity must succeed a con save or take 1d4 cold damage and become frozen. And what frozen does is the affected entity is utterly enamelled in ice and is incapacitated, meaning they cannot move. Another bit of manipulation. If it is dealt bludgeoning, thunder, or force damage, the ice shatters, ending the condition. My apologies. I've got a tickle in my throat and it's causing me to misspeak because I keep focusing on it. Basically, this is going to allow us to have even more manipulation over our enemies, allowing us to encrust them with frost with our ice spells that we're already using, meaning that we're going to be able to freeze them in place and just keep them there while we can focus on other stuff. So pretty good. But if you're not too into that, you could also go with the Diadem of Arcane Synergy if you wanted to kind of have a bit more melee damage, basically meaning that you can cast, basically when you cast a spell that inflicts a condition, which pretty much all of ours does, you get Arcane Synergy, which is going to add your spellcasting modifier to the damage of your weapon attacks, which is really good. It's going to allow us to do more damage, and would synergize nicely with our ring, the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel. After hitting a creature with a weapon attack, you can cast illusion or enchantment spells as a bonus action. And again, we have a lot of those, which means if you wanted to play this as a Gish type character, you attack with the Dancing Breeze and then cast your illusion spells with a bonus action. One of my most popular builds of all time, the Psionic Warrior, did this, and it does work to great effect. So if you want to focus more on the status effect, which I would kind of recommend, I would kind of go with the Cold Brim Hat, but the Arcane Synergy Diadem is going to work pretty nicely. Now, I did actually make this character a Dark Urge, which means we can get the Deathstalker Mantle. I feel like Loki is an evil character that goes through a redemption arc, so playing a Redemption Dark Urge for your run with this character would work out quite nicely. But of course, with the Deathstalker Mantle, whenever you kill an enemy, you become invisible for 2 turns, which is perfect for Loki. Absolutely perfect. We absolutely wanted this. The Infernal Robe can be obtained in Act 1. It is the best thing, I think, for like making a Loki kind of look with his kind of like Avengers 1 look. I mean, if you wanted to go for something more like his look from the actual show, where he looks a bit more modern, I mean, that's harder to do, but you could certainly try with camp clothing. But I wanted to kind of replicate his more actual, like, villainous look here. So I thought the Infernal Robe coloured in Sage Green, that's what this is coloured in, Sage Green, looks pretty damn close. This is going to give us a +1 to our armor class, resistance to fire damage, and also the ability to cast the fire variant of Fire Shield, which kind of sucks. I would like the ice variant, but hey, it's a free spell. Might as well take it, since we mainly just want it for the look anyway. With that, you are going to have 15 base armor class of our dexterity. However, with, if I just find it, mage armor, I'll just quickly cast it to show you, we get a total of 18, which is pretty good for someone who is just a caster. Now, obviously, the big way you get the Infernal Robe in game is by killing Karlach for Will, which, if you're playing an evil run, perfectly fine. But you could also do the most Loki thing possible and trick both Will and Mizora into allowing you to get the robe and keeping Karlach alive. If you know how, you know how. There is instructions on the Infernal Robe's wiki page, which is in the description. So it felt quite on theme to get this as well in both aspects, as well as having it be the most accurate fashion-wise. As I said, we have the Gloves of Dexterity to set our dex score to 18. We don't need to hash that out again. And finally, the Disintegrating Nightwalkers. You can't be enwebbed, entangled, or ensnared, and cannot slip on grease or ice. Again, we're making all these ice surfaces, we don't want to fall over on them. But it's also going to give us a casting of Misty Step once per short rest, allowing us to teleport. If we didn't pick this up as a wizard, which we didn't, we still have a way of getting it. But if you wanted to cast it more than just once per short rest, pick it up as one of our spells as a wizard if you would like. And finally, our final 2 things here are the Spellcrux Amulet, which is going to give us spell slot restoration. Basically, once per long rest, you can expend a bonus action to replenish any expended spell slot. This is going to allow us to get our 6th and 5th level spell slots back. This is really useful because obviously we have a lot of higher level spells here, so we want to use a lot because it's what Loki would do, so having the ability to use them as much as possible between Arcane Recovery and the Spellcrux Amulet works quite nicely here. And now this is just kind of a bonus ring. I went with the Ring of Geniality because it's going to give us a +1 bonus to Perception and Deception. Perception and Deception? Persuasion and Deception. Again, our Deception is unfortunately our lowest score, which feels out of our Charisma stats, which feels really bad for Loki. So this is going to boost that up a little bit, but honestly, swap this out for whatever you like. Or again, put that proficiency from Stealth into Deception if you would so desire. The next thing I'm going to go over is some extra spells we can learn from scrolls that I think would work really nicely for this build. First up is Artistry of War. Summon the apparitions of 6 Master Strategists. Each apparition strikes a target of your choosing, dealing 8 to 18 force damage. This is 12d6 plus 6 force damage. This is a much more powerful version of Magic Missile, and would really feel like a blast from an Infinity Stone when used. Scroll of Otterluk's Freezing Sphere. This is just another really good ice spell. It basically creates a ball of churning ice that can be launched instantly to generate a frosty explosion, or stored for later use. It's basically a fucking ice grenade that deals 10d6 cold damage. Quite cool. Pun not intended. Next up is the Scroll of Wall of Ice. This is going to deal 10d6 cold damage plus an extra 10d6 cold damage that is conditional. Raise a wall of solid ice that deals 10 to 60 cold damage to anyone standing in its way. When the ice is broken, it leaves behind a cloud of frigid air that deals 10 to 60 cold damage per turn to creatures within. God damn! That is one of the highest damage numbers I've ever seen on a spell. Pretty cool. And finally, one of the most on-theme spells for a God of Mischief, Scroll of Otto's Irresistible Dance. Cause a creature to start dancing, making it unable to take actions or move. Its attackers have advantage on attack rolls. Again, so basically you gain advantage on attack rolls against it, but Dancer has disadvantage on attack rolls and dexterity saving throws. This is just a fun one, but you can pick it up as a scroll. Normally this is only available to Bard, I believe, usually, so this is quite nice to have. So yeah, pick this up. So yeah, that is the build. Overall, quite a fun one. Getting to use both Trickery Cleric and Enchantment Wizard, two classes that I've never actually used before in any of my builds, finally, and in order to create one of my most highly requested builds of all time, was super fun. And I feel like, again, you're going to get a lot out of this build. You can kind of see in the combat footage that this build is definitely what I said it is. It is a support build, it is not a frontline fighter. You can see immediately right off the bat in the combat footage that I'm immediately able to kind of get rid of the threat of 4 enemies at once, manipulating them in various different ways through command and Tasha's Hideous Laughter. But then when it actually comes down to fighting the Cambion boss, this build just can't do it on its own. This build is meant to manipulate, not be at the forefront. Yes, it can deal tons of damage with its ice spells, but it's not its main draw. The main draw of this is to be a more of a supporting, manipulative build that allows your allies to be able to attack, or the people you control at least, to be able to attack for you and deal massive damage that way. So, when this build tries to fly solo, which is how I do all of my combat testing, you'll see this is actually one of the very few builds where I had to flee before the Cambion boss was even defeated. I did manage to do a significant chunk of damage to him, but he's actually resistant to ice damage, so, I mean, that made it quite difficult. But overall, this build is still going to be really effective. It is just going to do better as a team. But overall, this is still a really fun option. As you can see, I was able to hold enemies in place, make them prone with laughter, I wasn't able to use Dominate Person, unfortunately, because none of them were humanoids, which is fucking stupid, but you get the point. Anyway, as for the end of video stuff, quite happy with how everything's going at the moment. We've just hit like 3,300 subscribers, which means we're still kind of on track to maybe grab another 1,000 by the next kind of milestone, which I believe was the 6th, because I think it's basically on like the 6th of every month, but I hit the next 1,000 limit, so we're still on track for that, which is super good. I've also received my first paycheck from YouTube as far as all this goes, and I will say it's not an insignificant amount of money. Not massive amounts, nothing to make this my full-time job or anything, which I don't want to do, but as a side thing, it's quite nice, so I'm going to try and spruce up the channel a little bit, maybe up the production quality a little bit if I can, when I finally get my hands on it properly, because I'm still kind of waiting on some final legal stuff to come through, but I'm quite looking forward to kind of giving the channel a bit of a makeover in a few ways. Also, again, we are going to be live streaming this weekend. I know you may have seen the stream schedule go up. I did decide to go with the part 2 of our Honor mode playthrough, just because I think it's a bit easier. But I still kind of want to discuss builds on stream, so we can kind of just have that in chat while we're playing. So yeah, we'll go with that. Is there anything else I wanted to go over? I don't believe so. I'm recording this the day before my newest video goes up tonight, which is that beginner's Act 1 build that I made, so I'm not sure exactly how that went, but I'll be interested to see how it goes. And also, my kind of big video that I've been working on in the background, which is based on Lethal Company, is going to be coming out soon. It's nearly finished. I just have to do some final edits and basically kind of a quality passover on it, and it will be ready to go. That will be replacing one of my daily uploads next week, or maybe even the week after, depending on how, because basically, since it features all my friends, I want them to see it in private first, so we kind of have to arrange, like a watch party or something, because they're all really looking forward to seeing it, and then I can release it to the public after that. So it'll either be next week or the week after, we'll have to see. But next week, I will say, on Monday next week, it's going to be the start of a new series of builds, that being the builds for the Origin characters. So my first build is going to be Karlach, but I'm also going to be doing Astarion Gale, all of them. I'm really looking forward to showing off my Karlach build. It is one of my favourites that I've made, because I feel like it works for the character really well, and is a super fun playstyle, so I'm looking forward to showing that off. And from that point on, All the videos that I upload, with the exception of the one that's going to be the Lethal Company video, will be me going through all of the origin characters until they are finished. Feel free to send some build requests in the meantime, but know that I will not be getting to them anytime soon, which I'm sure a lot of people already know, as I've fallen behind on so many, but whatever. Anyways, I've rambled on long enough. I'll leave you with the rest of the combat footage now, unless the video is ending and the screen is fading to black, which it very well could be. I'll see you all next time. I'm actually going to go watch Season 2 of Loki, because I watched the first season, and I quite liked it, and I haven't seen the second season yet, so... And this video kind of got me in the mood. But, okay, goodbye, for real this time.
Reason Tenia. Back to